Can you beat the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim on survival mode without bartering, using or spending any gold? Shoutouts to Skizzy for recommending this challenge. I really enjoyed it. I had such a good time with this. If you guys do have any recommendations, let me know in the comments or join the Discord. I'm always looking for new ideas on new challenges. So the rules for this challenge are pretty straightforward. I'm not allowed to spend any gold whatsoever. And I'm also not going to mess around with the game difficulty. It's set to the standard difficulty as a default, and I'm not going to change that no matter how hard this challenge gets. So I think without survival mode, this would have been an absolute cakewalk. The thing is, I didn't actually know that I had survival mode as an option until I left the tutorial. Also, I'd never played survival mode before, so this was my first time. I played Fallout New Vegas hardcore difficulty, but Skyrim survival mode is very different. So the constraints of survival mode in order of biggest pain in the arse are: 1, that you can't fast travel, it's completely disabled. This was easily the biggest problem for this challenge because it meant I wasn't even allowed to spend gold on the carriages to get around Skyrim quicker. Survival mode also introduced environmental challenges, such as hunger that will slowly drain your stamina over time, making you less effective in combat. Temperature effects from the cold will start to drain your health bar, becoming increasingly worse as you go from chilly to frostbitten. Becoming excessively tired and fatigued will start to drain your character's magic meter, forcing you to rest. You also need to rest to level up in survival mode, something I didn't know about when I went into Bleak Falls Barrow, and it made me very confused. So I decided to choose an orc for my race purely because of the higher heavy armor and smithing skill that you get given at the start of the game. I felt they would probably be very useful to me, but it turned out smithing wasn't that great. I made a few mistakes during this challenge. One of them was putting points into smithing. See, I thought I'd be able to use it, but because I couldn't spend any gold, I couldn't invest in it. I decided to escape Helgen with the Stormcloak Ralof. Now this is because if you do, right at the start you get to kill an Imperial Captain, which will give you some decent heavy armor to start with. Before I left Helgen, I decided to power level on Ralof to increase my sneak skill a little bit, getting to level 3. I thought I was going to use sneak a lot more than I actually did in this challenge, so this was kind of a waste of time. At level 2, I chose to advance health and put my first perk into stealth, which made me 20% harder to detect when sneaking. At level 3 I advanced my health a little bit further and took the first perk of Armsman from the one-handed weapon perk tree. After we escaped Helgen and reached the Guardian Stones, I chose the Thief Stone. Now this would later prove to be a massive mistake as well, especially since I can't fast travel. I would have to run all the way back to correct this. Once I reached Riverwood, I started collecting all the food I could find like a crazed megalomaniac, taking all of what little possessions the people of this town had. Gerda gave me what little supplies she had before she went back to senselessly chopping wood. She vowed to herself she would never stop chopping wood until Alduin had been defeated. After quickly making some food for the journey ahead of me, I proceeded to rob the rest of the residents of Riverwood. That is really hard to say actually. Getting all excited over my newfound love of fields, I ignored the giants fighting the companions completely and just took everything I could from the fields. Now, since I can't spend any gold, enchanting is pretty much off the table. I couldn't really work out a way to get soul gems and spells to trap souls in, but I did decide that I needed to disenchant pretty much anything I could find. Now this was basically just to raise my level a little bit and get rid of some excess equipment. I also had a little play around with alchemy. I was desperately going to need alchemy later on, although I didn't realise this at the time. Then I quickly headed back to Riverwood for reasons I can't actually remember. I had no fast travel, so I had to follow this guy around. Then it was off to Bleak Falls Barrow, where I found a bed and was able to rest and level up. I needed to rest anyway because my magicka was being drained due to fatigue. I chose to level up stamina this time because basically your carry weight is affected by survival mode, meaning you can carry less, so you kind of need more stamina. I also chose the next perk in Armsman. So it wasn't until I was in the room where you actually get the Dragonstone of Bleak Falls Barrow that I realised I had severe rock joint. Now, rock joint was the bane of this run. It was the biggest issue with this run, and it's why it took so long. See, without the ability to spend gold, I couldn't pray to any of the shrines to cure my diseases. I also couldn't buy potions to cure my diseases, and I couldn't buy ingredients to make potions to cure my diseases, so I would have to find them for myself. This opened a new and interesting challenge to the game, forcing me to interact with the open world, foraging and scavenging. But all that would have to wait for the time being. As I returned to Whiterun, I found a dragon was attacking the western watchtower. I disenchanted the boots I was given by the Jarl, although I did find a bow of scorching within Bleak Falls Barrow that I knew I was going to need for the rest of the run, although I wasn't yet sure how to recharge it. So this is where lack of having a horse or fast travelling became a problem. See, I wanted to level up, so I would need to sleep. However, I couldn't fast travel to Riverwood. And of course, since I couldn't spend any gold, I couldn't pay for a room either. So for contingency, I decided to join the companions. This would give me access to their food supply, as well as a bed. When I leveled up, I increased my stamina again, just to increase my carrying capacity, and I went for steel smithing. So I'm not gonna lie, the first dragon fight was an absolute nightmare. I couldn't really improve any of my weapons or armor at the minute. I couldn't buy any spells, and my character was just so generally weak that I had to rely on my allies to finish the dragon. Then, after the dragon was defeated, much like a multinational corporation, hiring a fresh-faced, bright and smiley new employee, I began to steal his soul, leaving him a shell of his former self. So it was at this point in the challenge that I decided I wanted to do something about the amount I could carry. You see, survival mode actually reduces the amount you can carry, and it was becoming really problematic. So my intended solution to this was to get the extra pockets perk from the pickpocket tree, but after pickpocketing a few people around Whiterun, I realised 1, they didn't have stuff expensive enough to do this, and 2, it was going to take a very long time. Remember that I couldn't fast travel or pay to fast travel, so getting to other places just to do this would have been more than tedious. Putting my thieving days behind me, I decided it was time to travel to High Hrothgar. Now, I couldn't buy a horse, I couldn't fast travel, so I would have to run. Later on, I would realise there was a much easier way to do this, and that I'm frankly stupid for not doing it sooner, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So I was interested in finding out how long it had taken me to get from Whiterun to Iverstad, so I decided to drop a save and compare the difference in game time. So from leaving Whiterun, game time was 4 hours, 34 minutes, and getting into Iverstad, it was pretty much 5 hours, so it had taken, roughly speaking, 25 minutes. By the time I actually reached High Hrothgar, my health bar had taken a significant beating due to the sheer freezing temperatures of the area. My character was also pretty tired and hungry. So after the Greybeards had finished shouting at me, they sent me to retrieve the horn of Jurgen Windcaller, which was pretty far away actually. I skillfully and carefully made my way down the throat of the world by unconventional means, because I didn't really fancy going down the 7,000 steps again. After returning to Whiterun, I killed some cultists before retiring at the companions to level up and resupply. Again, I went for increased stamina and took the first Juggernaut perk, giving me a 20% bonus to my armor rating. The closest settlement to my objective was Marthal. Unfortunately, because I can't use gold, I couldn't pay the carriages to get to Marthal, so I was going to have to run. But then I had an idea, something I wish I'd thought of right at the start of this challenge. I stole a horse from Whiterun stables. It was going to make travelling so much quicker. Really wish I'd thought of this sooner. Unfortunately, this plan wasn't perfect because once you dismount, the horse will return to wherever you stole it from. So once I got the horn, I was still going to have to run back. So I now had 2 problems on my hand. Rock Joint was absolutely destroying my ability to fight effectively. See, I was doing 75% less damage. Then a Whiterun guard turned up demanding I give the horse back. I tried to put up some kind of fight, but it didn't go well. See, because I couldn't spend anything, I couldn't really upgrade my armor, I couldn't buy better equipment, and I didn't really have a lot of potions. This just wasn't a fight that I was yet capable of winning, so I reloaded after I was killed, of course, and the Whiterun guard took me to prison. That's right, all the way back to Whiterun. Fearing further incarceration, I decided not to push my luck and steal a horse. Don't worry, it was planned for the future, but for now I decided just to run to Riverwood. See, there was a little bit of legwork I would have to do if I was going to continue this challenge. I bumped into a guy in Riverwood who wanted me to join the Dawn Guard. I promptly ignored him and went to the Standing Stones where I chose the Warrior Stone. That fixed the problem from earlier. Confident that my melee skills would increase a lot faster now, I went mud crab hunting. Now this was because I needed ingredients to create a potion of cure disease. I also found some charred skeever hide from a giant's camp, and I was ready to make my potion. With the mud crab meat and the charred skeever hide, I was able to create a potion of cure disease. Now that I was cured, I headed back to Whiterun, stole a horse, and headed for the Horn of Yogan Wingcaller. Now that I was recharged and ready for action, there was nothing stopping me. I could see the clear effects all too well that Rockjointed had on me, as I easily now cut through all the Draugr and any other enemies I found. Now, far be it for me to judge, but should the secret services of the Empire really be plundering old ancient tombs and stealing things? Reading the mysterious note, it instructed me to head to Whiterun. Now, I thought I was going to have to run, but I actually bumped into the horse I stole, so yeah, that was pretty sweet. I suspect the reason that he hadn't returned to Whiterun was because he was running for some trolls in Labyrinth, so yeah, that worked out pretty well for me. Upon returning to Riverwood and talking to Delphine, I hit a massive roadblock because, well, this happened.
Attic room, eh? Well, we don't have an attic room, but you can have the one on the left. Make yourself at home.
So at this point, I thought the challenge might be over because I would have to give Delphine 10 gold in order to rent the attic room. Luckily though, Skyrim actually lets you put your money into a container by selecting your gold bag and placing everything into that container. So I was able to do that. When I went back to Delphine and asked her to rent the attic room, she didn't take any gold off me, so I could continue with the challenge. So after sleeping in my free bed, and I cannot stress this enough, it was free, I didn't give her any gold at all. I put my points into stamina and I chose the third armsman perk. So now that I'd managed to get around that little roadblock, it was off to go kill another dragon to prove to Delphine that I was in fact the Dragonborn. So you guys know the drill by now, run to Whiterun, steal a horse. So I actually got really lucky during this fight because the dragon decided to attack the giants, and as it turns out, the giants are crazy overpowered, and they pretty much just took care of the dragon for me. So I decided the quickest route back would be to head north to Windhelm, where I stole a horse and then rode all the way back to Riverwood. I actually passed my stolen horse along the way, which is pretty cool. Now when I returned to Riverwood, because I was a wanted man, Delphine tried to kill me. This happened quite a few times. So the only way out of this seemed to be to actually just go to prison and then run all the way back to Riverwood from Whiterun. So there was a clear pattern here that whilst this challenge so far wasn't impossible, it was making gameplay extremely inconvenient to the point of being extremely tedious. That's not to say that this wasn't a lot of fun. I had so much fun with this, but I think my end game time was something like 28 hours or something like that. So my next objective was to head to Solitude. Now this was probably one of the hardest trips in this challenge. Because of the constraints of survival mode, your character will start to freeze very quickly, meaning you are going to have to take shelter and warm up. I stole a horse from Whiterun, but it still wasn't an easy journey. To prevent freezing to death, I would have to stop off in Marthal and get warmed up before we finally reached Solitude. I stopped briefly to enjoy a man getting his head cut off. Then I went to speak to Malborn, who told me that he could smuggle my equipment into the Thalmor embassy, presumably in his rectal cavity. So to be honest, dealing with the Thalmor within the embassy was a lot easier than I remember it being, although the last time I played this game, it was on legendary difficulty. I actually even found some elven maces, which I would pretty much use for the rest of the run. When I found what I was looking for within the Thalmor embassy, I set the prisoner free and escaped. And yes, I did think about killing him, but I thought he would be a nice distraction for the ice troll at the end of the embassy. Next, I stole a horse from Solitude and made it back to Riverwood, where I met Delphine in her basement. When I made it to Riften, Brynjolf wanted me to perform a heist before he would help me. Now, I really did not want to do this, but I couldn't see a way around it without any bribes, so I just kind of messed it up to get it over with quickly. Now, it was at this point I discovered that I had severe rock joint, a disease that was constantly reoccurring throughout this challenge. So I decided I would deal with that later and just look for Esbern. When I headed to the Thieves Guild, everybody wanted a bribe off me for any information, apart from Dirge, who just wanted a good old fist fight. By the time I actually got to the Ragged Flagon, I was ready to hit level 12. I decided to choose the Novice Restoration perk. Since I couldn't actually buy any restoration spells, I needed to get the most out of what I had. After convincing Esbern to come with me, we quickly left Riften, only to be attacked by a dragon. And now, time for a little joke. What do dragons and vacuum cleaners have in common? They both suck. Seriously, when you're this underpowered and this underleveled, dragons really suck. My attacks against them seem to be as effective as Krillin's attacks on Perfect Cell. Lucky for me though, I had the local guards nearby to help me take care of the flying beast. Now, I didn't want to risk stealing a horse in case Esbern attacked me, so I would have to run all the way from Riften to Riverwood with Esbern. Now, this was a problem because he would get into combat with every single creature we came across. Oh, Esbern, I really hate you so much. So after I returned Esbern to Delphine, they headed off to Alduin's Wall, and I decided it was time to cure my disease. I needed something a little bit more permanent, as finding ingredients was extremely difficult. So I decided I would need something a little more permanent to cure my disease with. Now this is why I ended up kicking myself, because I realised that if you join the companions, you can kill members of the Silver Hand. Not only do they carry hawk feathers, which is an important ingredient in cure disease potions, but they actually carry the potions themselves. This would have saved me so much time if I'd done this earlier. After rushing through the rest of the quest to get rid of Farkas, I made as many potions as I could before returning to the companions and leveling up. I chose Dual Fury as my perk as it would make my attacks 20% faster. Nothing really remarkable happened on the way to Alduin's Wall, although I did level up and quickly pick up the Recovery perk, allowing my magicka to regenerate a little bit faster. From here, the closest settlement to me was Markarth. I decided it would probably be quicker to run west towards Markarth and steal a horse, rather than heading east on foot. Cold, tired and hungry, I returned to High Hrothgar with the horn of Jörgen Windcaller. The Greybeards shouted at me for being late and sent me to their headmaster, or in this case, a giant dragon named Parthenax. He shouted at me and tried to send me to bed without supper, so I went in a huff and parkoured down High Hrothgar. I got super lost on the way to Winterhold and nearly froze to death. I managed to warm myself up in a pub ironically called the Frozen Hearth. Unfortunately though, I was now frostbitten. Realising that being frostbitten doesn't actually affect anything I'm using, I just shrugged my shoulders and kept going. After gaining access to the College of Winterhold, I had to go see a crazy man with a cube in the middle of nowhere right at the top of Skyrim. This was treacherous to get to, as the cold water would damage your health even further. So I wasn't actually sure if there was stables in Winterhold, but I couldn't find them, so I had to do this all on foot. As I was making it through the Dwemer ruins towards the Elder Scroll, I discovered a bed where I could sleep in and leveled up. Now I actually took Assassin's Blade perk, thinking that would come in useful, but I didn't actually use this at all for the rest of this challenge, so that was a big mistake. At long last, finding my Elder Scroll, I was about ready to start playing with time like a kitten with a ball of string. Funnily enough, on my way back to High Hrothgar, I bumped into Cicero and I actually stole his horse to continue my journey. Travelling back in time with the Elder Scroll, I was able to learn the Dragonrend shout from the ancient Nords. Then it was time to take on Phantom Ganon himself. I say that because the first fight is supposed to give you a little bit of a taster of what the final battle is going to be like. I, however, found this first battle a lot more difficult than the final one. My plan for Alduin was basically to hit him as much as I could using Dragon Rend Shout and quick saving in a safe place. I died so many times doing this, but thanks to quick saving in strategic places, I managed to get through it. So Alduin bravely ran away, and I was forced to capture a dragon called Aldavig, who took me to Skuldafn, where I would have to head into Sovngarde. But not before we held a council at High Hrothgar. Now this was particularly difficult without spending gold, as because I didn't have fast travel, I would have to travel all the way to Solitude and all the way to Windhelm without fast travel or using carriages. It was an absolute nightmare. When we finally held the council, I sided as much as I could with the Empire. This is because I believe that having Skyrim in the Empire will make it stronger and more prepared for when the Thalmor inevitably attack again. I was then able to capture a dragon at Dragon's Reach and fly away to Skuldafn on his back, much like a storybook that I can't remember the name of. I got a really nice Dragon Priest mask before entering Sovngarde. It gave me plus 50 to my magicka. This would definitely be useful for Alduin. Now the Alduin fight itself was pretty straightforward. Let the heroes of Sovngarde do most of the work and shoot the occasional arrow. So finally, to answer the question, can you beat Skyrim on survival mode without spending any gold? Yes, you can, but do not ever attempt it. The final gameplay time for this challenge, doing just the main storyline, with the exception of one from the companions, was 30 hours and 17 minutes. When you consider that you're also going to be woefully under-equipped and under-leveled, the challenge was just so difficult. That being said, I did really enjoy this challenge, and it would be really interesting to see what else I could do with Skyrim and survival mode, but that is where we will leave it for today, guys. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. Please like, subscribe and all that good stuff. Leave any comments if you do have any. Join the Discord if you like, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.